The lights of the Apollo Theater in June 2025 were not merely a celebration. They were a blinding iridescent curtain designed to hide the wreckage of 3 decades of music history. On that stage, under the triumphant swell of applause, stood Clive Davis, the man the world calls the architect of the soundtrack. At 93 years old, he was being honored with the Legacy Award, a coronation attended by legends like Method Man and Busta Rhymes, who spoke of him as if he were a god of the industry. It was the ultimate cinematic theater, a display of untouchable prestige. But while Harlem echoed with the sounds of success 3 miles away at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, a different kind of silence was taking hold. There, in a cold gray federal cell, sat Sean Diddy Combs, the man Davis had bankrolled into existence with a $15 million gamble in 1993. The contrast was a visceral shattering of the industry's polished surface. One man stood in the glow of a legacy, while the other, the protégé he had molded into a mogul, sat in the dark, potentially holding the keys to a kingdom of secrets that the music world is desperate to keep buried. This is not just a story of talent and business. It is the revelation of a secret blueprint that allegedly traded the soul of a culture for the profits of a prison cell. To understand the core paradox of Clive Davis, one must look past the Ivy League dignity and the billion-dollar successes to find the root wound of modern hip-hop. In the late 1980s and early 90s, the music industry was at a crossroads. Rap was a conscious, rebellious force, but it had not yet been fully commodified by the massive corporations. According to a devastating report by radio host Larry Gators and an anonymous letter that surfaced in 2012, a tectonic shift occurred during a secret meeting at a Beverly Hills mansion in 1995. This was not a creative workshop. It was a summit between the most powerful music executives in the country and representatives from the FBI, the CIA, and private prison corporations. The agenda was surgical. The industry would no longer prioritize the conscious community-driven lyrics of the past. Instead, they would push a specific violent and aggressive brand of gangster rap. The logic was as chilling as it was simple. By glorifying conflict with the police and promoting a lifestyle of crime, the industry would act as the marketing department for the private prison system, ensuring a steady stream of human inventory for the cells. For decades, this was dismissed as a conspiracy, but the micro details of the industry's evolution suggest it was a blueprint for social engineering. The golden illusion of Bad Boy Records was born from this exact era of transformation. In 1993, after Diddy was fired from Uptown Records, Clive Davis did something that defied every rule of traditional business. He handed a 19-year-old with no experience running a label $15 million, roughly $40 million in today's currency. He didn't just give him money, he gave him total creative autonomy and the full weight of Arista Records. To the public, it looked like a visionary recognizing raw talent. But behind the scenes, the timing was too precise to be accidental. Only 2 years earlier, in 1991, Diddy had promoted a charity basketball game at City College, where a stampede left 9 people dead. In any other industry, that tragedy would have ended a career. Instead, Davis promoted him. He gave him the resources to build an empire on a sound that celebrated the very nihilism that the 1995 secret meeting allegedly mandated. The result was a cultural explosion, the notorious B.I.G. Craig Mack, and a parade of stars who became the faces of a lifestyle that sold millions of records but left thousands of young listeners in the correctional system. The shattering of this legacy began when Suge Knight, the former king of Death Row Records, started speaking from the depth of his 28-year prison sentence. Knight is a man with nothing left to lose, a convicted felon whose words are often dismissed, but his allegations carry the weight of a man who was in the room when the matches were lit. Knight has spoken of the egg test, a ritual of humiliation that upcoming artists were allegedly forced to endure to prove their loyalty to the higher-ups in the hierarchy. He didn't just name the behavior, he pointed the finger directly at Clive Davis as a man who knew exactly what was happening in the shadows of the industry and chose silence as his primary tool. Knight's claims suggest that when artists were accused of horrific crimes, the major labels didn't just hide the evidence. They put the victims on the payroll to keep them quiet. It was a system of institutional protection where profit was the only moral compass. Universal and Interscope have remained notoriously quiet in the face of these claims, refusing to engage in a public legal battle that might force the discovery of documents the industry wants to remain hidden forever. The paradox deepens when you consider the tragic final days of Whitney Houston, the crown jewel of Davis's empire. Reports indicate that only 48 hours before she was found dead in a Beverly Hills bathtub, Houston, and Davis had a heated, explosive argument. It was a disagreement witnessed by her daughter, Bobby Christina, who would later meet an eerily similar fate. The industry portrayed Houston's death as the inevitable end of a troubled star, but those who follow the shattering of the narrative ask a different question. Was Whitney Houston about to reveal the truth about the palace control that had governed her life and career? For decades, Davis had been her protector, but he was also her manager. In the world of the high-level music elite, those roles often collide in ways that leave the artist entirely vulnerable. The aftertaste of Houston's death is the realization that in the music world, a legend is often more valuable as a catalog than as a living human being. The contrast between Clive Davis and Diddy in 2025 is the ultimate resolution of this cinematic tragedy. Davis is currently being canonized by the Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music at New York University, an institution that trains the next generation to follow his financial systems. In the fall of 2024, the institute named Joey Bada as its artist-in-residence, turning a history of alleged exploitation into a curriculum of respectability. But as Diddy's trial approaches, the silence at the center of the industry is fracturing. Diddy's attorney, Mark Agnifilo, has stated that his client is eager to testify, a move that has sent shivers through the boardrooms of every major label. If Diddy decides to cooperate with federal investigators, he won't just be talking about his own parties. He will be talking about the $15 million in 1993, the secret meetings in 1995, and the men in charcoal suits who told him exactly what kind of gangster he needed to be. He is the spare who is finally tired of sitting in the dark while the architect receives his awards. The music industry, much like the monarchy, survives by being a system that is more durable than the individuals it consumes. It treats its artists like raw materials, valuable when they are producing, and disposable when they become a liability. The story of Clive Davis and the secret blueprint of 1995 is the story of how a culture was hijacked by corporate interests to serve a darker, more profitable master. It reminds us that the songs that defined our lives, the anthems of the 90s and the 2000s, were often born in the same rooms as the policies that destroyed our communities. The golden illusion of the music mogul is a mask for a much colder reality. A reality where talent is just the bait used to catch a consumer, and success is just the currency used to buy a legacy. As the federal system closes in on Diddy, the industry is holding its breath, waiting to see if the architect's throne will finally crumble under the weight of the truths it was built to hide. The legacy of Clive Davis is currently caught in the twilight angle. He is a man who has achieved everything the world tells us to want, yet his life is now shadowed by the testimony of those he helped create. Whether it is Suge Knight's accusations of the egg test or the specter of the 1991 City College stampede, the facts are beginning to form a picture that no awards ceremony can erase. The industry has standardized the silence, but the information density of the digital age is making it impossible to keep the archive drawer closed. Every interview, every memoir, and every secret tape is a micro detail in the trial of the century. A trial that is happening not in a courtroom, but in the court of public opinion. We are the witnesses to a crumbling dynasty, and the truth we are discovering is that the soundtrack of our lives may actually be the sound of a system that traded our future for a quarterly profit report. The final act of this psychological drama is about to begin. If Diddy speaks, the act of severance between the industry and its secrets will be final. The public will have to face the fact that their favorite music was part of a blueprint for mass incarceration. They will have to reconcile the golden illusion of the celebrity lifestyle with the root wound of the communities it exploited. Clive Davis remains the solitary, silent figure at the center of the storm. A man who survived the transition from vinyl to streaming from the 60s to the 2020s, but who may not survive the testimony of his most successful creation. The punchline of the music world is that no one is truly untouchable. Every icon has a price, and every throne is built on a foundation of secrets that eventually rot from the inside out. Thank you for staying with us through this cinematic unmasking of the industry's most dangerous secrets. If you recognize the gravity of the story, if you feel the weight of a culture that was sold for a profit, then join our community. Subscribe to our channel as we continue to peel back the velvet curtains on the lives that defined a century, the lives that were lived in the brightest spotlights and the darkest shadows. What do you think about the allegations against Clive Davis? Was he a visionary who recognized a cultural shift, or the architect of a devastating social experiment? Does the success of the 90s era justify the cost to the community? Share your thoughts in the comments. The stories of the icons never truly end. They just wait for the next secret to be revealed. The lights of the Apollo are still shining, but the echo of the cell door is louder. The truth has found its way to the surface, and the silence is finally broken. Keep looking for the truth behind the glamour, for that is where the real story lives. The journey through the ruins of the music empire continues, and we will be here to witness every shattering moment. The paradox of power is that the higher you build the wall, the more people want to see what is on the other side. Clive Davis built a fortress of prestige, but the micro details of his business dealings are the cracks that are letting the light in. From the April settlement style of handling crises to the future safeguarding of his own reputation through academic institutes, every move he makes is a testament to his understanding of power. But power in the end is just another illusion. As the generation that grew up on his music reaches the twilight angle of their own lives, they are starting to look back at the soundtrack with a different perspective. They are seeing the root wound that was hidden by the heavy bass and the flashy videos. They are seeing the men in the charcoal suits who stood in the shadows of the recording booth, holding the matches for the fire they knew would burn down the neighborhood. This is the commercial cinematic reality of our times, a world where the biography of a music legend is a thriller and the history of a genre is a crime scene. We have removed the fluff and the empty adjectives to give you the factual base of an era that changed the world. Charles Spencer saved his nephews by breaking the silence of the monarchy. Will the icons of the music world have the courage to do the same for the culture that made them? Or will they continue to hide behind the golden illusion? Until the very end, the checklist of history is long, and every name on it must eventually answer for the act of severance they committed against the truth. Clive Davis and Diddy are two sides of the same coin, the architect and the product, and as the coin continues to spin, we are all waiting to see how it lands. In the final act, we are left with the image of the 1995 secret meeting, the moment the future was decided in a Beverly Hills mansion. Whether it was real or a haunting myth, the result in the streets was the same. The soundtrack of our lives became a manual for a generation's struggle. The golden illusion was sold at a high price, and the aftertaste is a bitter reminder of what was lost. As we close this chapter, remember that behind every glitzy award and every multi-platinum record, there is a story that the industry doesn't want you to hear. It is a story of palace control and household instructions, of root wounds and twilight angles. It is the story of us. And as long as we keep asking the questions, the truth will continue to fly like a swallow toward the light. Goodbye for now, but the conversation is only getting louder. The commercial cinematic exploration of the truth is our mission, and we will see you in the next one. Stay tuned, stay vigilant. Keep searching for the reality beneath the glamour. The lights fade, the theater empties, and the archive drawer remains. But for the first time in 30 years, the key is in the lock. The man in the charcoal suit has been spotted, and the egg test is no longer an open secret. The silence has been standardized, but the voice of the truth is a coup d'âme triet lit that hits harder than any beat ever recorded. The architecture of the music industry is on trial, and the verdict is being written by the people who finally decided to listen to what was actually being said. The 17,000 characters of this narrative are just the beginning of the unmasking. We have tilled the garden of the 90s, and we found that the most beautiful flowers were growing on top of a grave. Let us remember the music, but let us never forget the price that was paid for the sound. The journey continues. The truth is solitary, silent, and supreme. And it is finally coming home. Keep your eyes open. The next revelation is just around the corner, and we will be there to peel back the curtain once more. The end is just a new beginning. Stay with us. The story is far from over.